As we approach Proverbs 31, we find one of the most celebrated passages in the Bible. This chapter speaks to the virtues and characteristics of a woman who honors God. It's often known as the wife of noble character or the virtuous woman. But beyond the title, Proverbs 31 offers wisdom and insight that applies to anyone seeking to walk in God's ways. It's important to remember that this description isn't a checklist to measure one's worth, but an expression of the transformative power of God's grace. In this reflection, we'll walk through Proverbs 31 verse by verse, seeking to understand its timeless message. Rather than viewing this passage as a standard to live up to by human effort, we'll explore it through the lens of God's grace in the New Covenant, where He empowers us to live in His strength. Verse 10 to 12. The worth of a virtuous woman. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. This passage begins by describing the value of a godly woman, likening her worth to precious jewels. In a world that often measures value based on accomplishments or material success, these verses remind us that true worth is rooted in character and integrity. The woman described here is not only trusted by her husband, but does him good. This goodness flows naturally from a heart surrendered to God. God's grace enables us to live in a way that blesses those around us, not because of our own striving, but because He empowers us. For those in Christ, our actions are not driven by a need to earn approval, but as a response to the love and grace we've received. Verse 13 to 15. Hard work and provision. She seeks wool and flax, and works with willing hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She rises while it is still night, and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. These verses emphasize diligence and the willingness to work for the good of others. This woman is intentional in providing for her household, and her actions reflect the love she has for her family. She exemplifies a heart that is generous and willing to go the extra mile. In the New Covenant, we understand that our work, whether at home or outside, is not to gain favor with God. Instead, it becomes a joyful act of service as we allow His love to flow through us. Our work becomes a testament to the grace at work in us, allowing us to serve others with joy and compassion. Verse 16 to 18. Wisdom and stewardship. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. These verses speak to her wisdom and discernment in managing resources. She is wise in her choices and takes care to be a good steward of what she has. Her efforts lead to productivity and prosperity. Through the lens of grace, we see that this is not about self-sufficiency, but about relying on God to guide our decisions. In Christ, we have access to wisdom that helps us manage the blessings He has given us. This means we can work confidently, knowing that it is God who provides the increase and sustains us. Verse 19 to 22. Compassion and generosity. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hands to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Here, the Proverbs 31 woman is seen extending kindness and compassion to those in need. She is not only focused on her family, but reaches out to the less fortunate. Her hands, which work for her household, also open in generosity to others. This speaks to the heart of Christ's message, to love others as we have been loved. When we walk in God's grace, we become channels of His love and provision, caring for the poor and the needy. It is a beautiful reminder that true strength is found in compassion, and that God's love extends through us when we reach out in kindness. Verse 23 to 27. Dignity and honor. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity, She can laugh at the days to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. These verses show a woman who is both respected and wise, someone who speaks with grace and kindness. Her influence is seen not only in her household but in the community. She brings dignity to her family and is known for her strength and wisdom. Living under the new covenant, we understand that dignity and honor are rooted in our identity in Christ. We don't need to strive to prove ourselves, but can walk confidently in the righteousness God has given us. Our words and actions reflect His character, and as we grow in grace, we bring His peace and wisdom to others. Verse 28 to 31, praise and blessing. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. The passage closes with praise for the woman who honors God. It isn't her outward appearance or achievements that earn her this praise, but her heart that fears and reveres the Lord. This fear of the Lord is a reverent awe, a recognition of God's greatness and grace. Under the new covenant, we see that our worth is found in Christ alone. Our lives are not about achieving perfection, but about growing in grace and reflecting His love. This passage reminds us that true beauty comes from a heart that seeks God. When we live with this heart, we are a blessing to those around us. Proverbs 31 paints a portrait of a woman who lives in reverence to God, not out of obligation, but in response to His love. Through this grace-filled perspective, we see that each verse encourages us not to strive by our own strength, but to rest in God's empowerment. This virtuous woman, like all who follow Christ, is not perfect by her own doing, but is transformed by God's grace. In closing, Proverbs 31 is an encouragement for us to live lives that reflect God's love and wisdom. It shows that through Christ, we can be people of strength, dignity, and kindness. May we walk in the same spirit, not striving for perfection but abiding in God's grace, knowing that in Him we find our true worth.